Hello and welcome to yet another video, and just following kind of the similar theme that we've been talking about during this month so far, which is analog cameras. In this video I actually have one of my favorite analog cameras to share with you all, and it's this one right here. It's the Canon EOS 50E. I'm aware that it's known slightly differently in, depending on which region of the world you're based in, but I'm just gonna be calling it the 50E because in my region it is called the 50E. And in this video, it's not a full review video, just my opinion on this particular camera in case you're also interested in, getting this camera, because it is actually a really good camera and I really liked it a lot. And I will also be comparing it to my favorite Canon EOS 1 because there are a lot of things that this camera can actually do and that this camera does very well as well. So I'll be just comparing it at some point as well in case you're, comparing it between the two, just by chance, or just want to get second or third opinion about this camera. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So the Canon EOS 50E. Now this camera, despite being out for quite some time now, it is still a very well-functioning camera and one that is still very enjoyable and reliable to use, really. And to be honest, if you don't need such a tough body or such a fully weather sealed body, this camera actually is a very nice option to go for because it does everything that, or actually almost everything that this camera can do. Sure, this has a much better build quality, but it's also a bit heavier. And this also just, I don't know, it has weather sealing as well, like basic weather sealing, and this doesn't. But in the same time, I'm aware that a lot of people also don't need that. And if you don't really need, magnesium alloy or fully weather sealed body, but still a rugged enough body just to get through general purposes of photography, then this camera is still a camera to consider. And just like in pretty much all of my other camera videos, this video will be divided into 3 different sections, and they're just not a full review video, but just based on my opinions on how I use this camera that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So yeah, the first section will be about the ergonomics and the usability, then following down into the image quality, and then into my conclusion, why I recommend this camera and why I might not recommend it. So let's first start with the first section, which is the ergonomics and the usability. Now this camera, despite not being their pro level, it does still feel very comfortable in the hands. It definitely feels much more comfortable than something like the Canon EOS 300, the Canon EOS 1000, things like that, the film cameras, which are actually a little bit smaller than this camera, but they also feel so much cheaper than this camera. This one has a nice full grip, takes the bigger battery, and actually takes the same battery as the Canon EOS 850 and also the Canon EOS 1, which is actually quite nice because those are actually much more long-lasting batteries that they take. And of course it's still full bar here, and in my EOS 1 I have the same battery in here for the past 2 years, and I definitely use this camera very often. I've also done several photo shoots with this camera on my channel already, so feel free to go and check that out. But yeah, the battery is still going strong and it is still full. It was in Thailand, it was also in the UK, it was also in Tallinn, Estonia, also Hong Kong, so I took it to so many places. So the batteries really last the battery lasts for quite some time with these cameras. Then of course, being a camera that gives you a lot of features, whether it's full auto all the way to semi-automatic and full manual, you have a lot of buttons and settings at your hands and at your fingertips really, and it's really nice. And talking about buttons, one thing that I really love about this camera that I didn't find in most other film cameras is actually the lock button on the mode dial. It doesn't lock on every mode, it only locks at the power off. So in order to turn the camera on, you have to press the lock button up here, and then you can switch to any other mode, and then from there it will just be, not locked, so you can actually scroll between those modes very well. But once you reach the power mode again, or the on-off mode, it will automatically lock the mode dial again, so that you don't really accidentally switch the camera on and then take random pictures here and there, because it takes film, it's not SD cards, so if you take a shot, then you cannot go back and delete it. So yeah, there is that. But I really love the controls on here. It's all very straightforward. You have a little screen up here to see all of your settings, which is great. Well, at least all of the essential settings rather, whether if you're in your multiple shot exposure or if you are using your flash. Talking about flash, you just have to lift it up if you want to use the flash, and you'll hear the sound of the flash loading, and then you can actually use the flash. But yeah, all of the settings, for example, if you want to go to different self-timer modes, or if you want to switch between a certain metering mode, things like that, they're all at your fingertips, which is very nice. And you know, it makes using this camera very, very intuitive and also very efficient in the same time. With the Canon EOS 1, for example, there are a lot of combinations of dials, which I guess it does come in handy if you don't want to accidentally switch any of the dials, but there are combinations where you have to press certain buttons to get to a certain mode, which is okay if you remember it, and for me it's totally okay. But if you're starting out, having all of the dials up here is just more intuitive and also more efficient as well, so that's actually quite nice. But otherwise, this camera also has two dials, so one up here for your index dial and your rear dial here, which you find in many of Canon's semi-professional and professional cameras. So it's actually quite nice if you're in manual mode, for example, and if you need to switch settings between your aperture and your shutter speed really quickly, these two dials are, you know, the way to go. And I really appreciate that there are a lot of, you know, little details here and there that they really thought out and, you know, implemented into this camera, because you really feel that really kind of efficient design and very well designed, that, you know, speed was really at the top of speed, and efficiency was really at the top of the designers or the engineer's mind at the time. And if we look to the back, there's actually a really nice big and bright viewfinder. Of course, it's not going to compare to like the most brightest viewfinder of the more modern DSLRs, but you know, it does get the job done. And if you want to actually focus manually with this viewfinder, it is big and bright enough to, you know, kind of focus manually with really great accuracy as well. So if you're into more manual focus lenses, with this particular viewfinder, you can actually focus more accurately as well. So that's actually quite nice, and it's very comfortable looking through this viewfinder anyway. And also, talking about focusing, the autofocusing system in this camera is actually quite nice. I would say that it is slightly slower than the EOS 1, but it does give you 3 autofocusing points with the illumination on it. At least with my Canon EOS 1, all I see is just one focusing point in the center, and it doesn't really illuminate. If other EOS 1s has the illumination, please let me know, but mine doesn't. So it does make focusing with this camera in high contrast areas really easy, really easy to see if the focus points got confirmation that it was actually focused on those areas that you wanted to focus on. So that's actually a bonus for this particular viewfinder and the autofocusing system. As I said, it reacts a little bit slower than the EOS 1, but it is still very accurate and still quite fast for the type of camera that came out in that era. So yeah, there's that. And of course, if you take the lens out, this is a fully metal mount, because some film cameras tend to have plastic mounts just to save cost, but this camera has metal mount, which is actually something to appreciate about. And with this camera, to load film is actually pretty simple, because like this one has battery inside. All you have to do is put your film in here and then roll it to the orange line, and then just close it up, and then the camera will wind the film to the starting point automatically, and the shot counts will be shown up on the screen as well. So yeah, that's actually something that's quite nice. And talking about settings, if you look into the viewfinder, this camera also shows your settings, your shutter speed and your aperture setting, as well as your exposure compensation. Of course, it will only remain there for a few seconds, because otherwise it will just constantly have to meter. So yeah. But talking about metering, this camera actually has a very accurate metering system. It's of course a very old system, but for a film camera it is accurate. I would say the Canon EOS 1 is a bit more accurate than this camera, especially in super contrasty situations, but in general purpose of photography, this camera has quite an accurate autofocus. Sorry. Yes, the autofocusing system is accurate, but has an accurate metering system as well. So yeah, there is that. Yeah. And then another point I really like about this camera, and I actually like this point over the EOS 1, is the shutter sound. It's a lot more quiet if you just take a listen. Yeah, and now just listen to the Canon EOS 1. This has a much higher pitch and a stronger mechanical feel. And if you're a person with shaky hands anyway, I don't have super shaky hands, but my hands are not super steady either. So, you know, having a much more dampened and lighter shutter actually helps out a lot when using lower ISO or lower ASA film in here and taking pictures in low light, because I just wanted to finish the film roll. It just ensures that the picture is less affected by the actual shutter when you're taking pictures with lower shutter speed. So it's quite nice, and also it's not too intrusive if you do a lot of street photography. And talking about street photography, the autofocusing system in this camera is actually good enough for general purpose of street photography anyway. So there's that. Yeah, I just took a picture. But otherwise, yeah, I really love the controls out of this camera. The metering system is quite accurate in most cases, and also the buttons and dials are logically arranged, in my opinion. They're all very easy to see, and nothing is super easy to turn by accident. So that's actually quite nice. And also the dials, they work really responsively. So with some older film cameras, when you try to change the settings really fast, the value actually follows just a fraction of a second after you finish dialing, and that can be a bit annoying and can take a bit of time to get used to. But this one, it just, you know, moves instantly as you move the dial. So that's actually quite nice as well. And now over onto the image quality. Well, there's not really a lot to say about the image quality, because it is gonna deliver the kind of images that, you know, what the lens that you mount in front of it would produce, as well as the feel of the film that you actually have it in. So if you put in the Kodak Gold or the Ultra Max or the Kodak Color Plus or what have you, then it will also give you the vibe of those film, with the benefit of using whichever lenses that you wish to use in front of the camera. So in terms of the image quality, I would say the image quality is quite good because the metering is quite good, and also there's no light leaks in this camera, at least not that I can see. And also if you pair this camera with really good lenses, then the image quality will also be very, very nice as well. So overall, not too much complaint about the image quality. It's just like, if there's too much contrast, then the metering can actually prioritize to go a bit darker. But apart from that, there's not really much to really complain about. And also, being an old film camera, you can also even experiment with a lot of the film lenses that would give you certain look on the actual film that you would otherwise not get when adapting those film lenses onto the digital sensors. So yeah, there is that. But yeah, otherwise, I don't really have a lot of complaints about the image quality out of this camera, because I know that if I don't like the actual image quality, it's probably just on me, on the film selections that I use, or the actual lenses that I have paired with the camera. So it's generally really on me. But otherwise, yeah, just no complaints at all. I would really highly recommend getting this camera for the image quality as well. So yeah, but then I would also recommend even something like the EOS 500, EOS 300, the EOS 1000 if you just want to have a proper SLR experience with different lenses. But this camera has more than just the basic experience, which is what I'll be talking about in my conclusion now. So to conclude, I highly recommend this camera because for the price, 50 euros, you're getting a really reliable film camera that, you know, the quality is still comparable to something like a Canon EOS 1, for example. There are a lot of settings you can use on this camera, whether it's multiple exposures or set everything really quickly. The frames per second or the frame rate is actually also quite decent. Yeah, so it's just not really much to complain because it's a very quiet camera. For a film camera, it's quite quiet with motor in there, and everything is just very efficient to operate and very quick to use as well. So yeah, overall I would highly recommend it. But if you are just like a beginner who just don't mind going to a smaller film camera like the EOS 300, EOS 500, EOS 1000, things like that, for a much lower price of around 5 euros, 10 euros, then by all means just go for those, because those cameras will still deliver you, you know, very similar image quality to this one, albeit just much less control, things like that. But if you still want to have, you know, all of the controls at your fingertips and everything super quick to use, then this camera would be the camera I would recommend. And it also has a much more accurate metering system than something like an EOS 300, EOS 1000, things like that. And also in my experience, something like an EOS 300, EOS 500, EOS 1000, over time, the shutter curtain can be more unreliable. What I mean by that is sometimes the shot that you get might not be a full frame shot. There might be a little bit of the problem with the shutter, so be careful with that. Whereas the shutter in this camera is a lot more reliable, so you can actually, you know, use it in a much more tough environment than the EOS 300, EOS 1000, what have you. But of course, still be careful because it's not weather sealed like the EOS 1. So that would be just my concern. So just list your pros and cons. But of course, if you can find this camera for a very low price of, let's say, 10 euros, 15 euros, then just grab it, really, because it is a really good option, and the build quality is really good as well. So yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. If you need a free photography guidebook, it's absolutely for free on my website. Just click the link down in the description section below. So as my photography courses, both free and paid, they're also available on my website now. The link is also down in the description section below. If you have any questions, anything to share, any stories to share, any recommendations, then feel free to actually just comment down in the comment section below as well. Otherwise, I thank you all very much for watching this video this long, and I wish you all a great time. Stay safe, have fun shooting. Till next time, bye for now.